there's this huge wave of volume and transactions happening in the world of NFTs right now. And the two guys who actually sold the Bored Apes are ex-traditional finance guys who worked in distressed credit. And they said, look, when you hold an incredibly illiquid asset and you get liquidity, you sell that asset, right? Wow. They unlock $9.9 million for themselves, which is great. Good for them. But they were crowing about how it didn't affect the price of the asset. I think it's just a delayed transmission. I think the floors of these assets are absolutely going to crater as soon as these token farmers sort of just don't want to wear the inventory risk anymore.
The only possible thing that doesn't destroy the floor, tying it back into TradFi, is that it becomes a locked market like housing is right now, and people just don't want to sell, right? And they're taking those apes off the market. That's the only thing that survives the floor crashing, right? That's the only countervailing force.
Yeah, so one of the people who has eaten a ton of volume is this single account called Mochi Big Brother. I think he's put 300 ETH plus into these NFTs, way more than that. 3,000 ETH, I think, into these NFTs. I mean, he was the one who digested the majority of those Bored Apes. I think it happened while he was sleeping. The account seems to be live during Asian hours. He puts these massive bid walls. So he's basically saying, I'm willing to buy 50 Bored Apes at, 70 ETH. Doesn't expect to get filled for all of them, but he's earning tokens, airdrop points for just having the bids there. Well, they filled him, and he woke up with all these Bored Apes. Now, he has historically been someone who has owned a lot of Bored Apes. I don't know if he wants to own 70 of them, 70 more than he already does, right? But I don't think he's going to try to destroy the floor because it would only hurt his other holdings. But he's been this today and yesterday, he's been trying to liquidate a lot of them here and there. He'll sell 5 and then someone else will fill them for 2 and then he'll sell 6. And, it's like this war back and forth of trying to get rid of the inventory. I think for the smaller projects, though, where you have real mercenary liquidity, I think you're just going to see these floors collapse as people are taking advantage of the instant liquidity. And then it's this delayed transmission mechanism that all of this mercenary liquidity is just going to try to get all that tied up value out. And it's sort of this it's a weird prisoner's dilemma, right? Because all this mercenary liquidity is like, who's going to dump on the floor first, right? If I know that the airdrop game ends tomorrow, do I front run everyone else and sell all my inventory into their bids and they get some extra points, but I'm out of my inventory risk? Well, if everyone knows I'm going to do that, why doesn't someone just front run me the day before? And someone front runs me the day before. And I don't know how this is going to play, but I think it ends in tears.
Has there been any, I'm sure, assume there is, conspiracy theories that Blur is in cahoots with these whales that are trying to liquidate large portfolios?
No conspiracy theories that Blur is in cahoots with the whales. What is fascinating, though, is when you look at the vast majority of volume on Blur, it's coming from just a few accounts. There are a few accounts that are absolutely racking up a tremendous amount of buy and sells. And that they're burning the bid-ask spread and they're burning the ETH of the transactions every time they do it. But they are accumulating the vast majority of the points. Blur has said they're dropping 300 million tokens at the end of this sort of airdrop season. The token, I think, is worth $1 right now. So if the token goes down to 20 cents, right, you're still talking about $60 million up for grabs. Now, when you get the token, then everyone tries to dump it again. And so, what can you actually extract? But I think it's a big question. Who's going to dump on the floor first?
Somebody thinks there, who's going to dump on the floor first? Can you imagine, back in the day, whether not that either of us ever traded perps or on BitMEX or leverage trades or anything, but you remember,
never.
if you were to do that, sometimes you'd wake up in the morning and you'd be closed out of your position. Can you imagine waking up in the morning to owning 70 apes?
That's a lot of apes, man. Right? I mean, that's a lot of apes. Other interesting development in the NFT world. You remember 3 Arrows Capital?
Yeah, of course.
Their portfolio, their NFT portfolio, is up for liquidation. So in trying to recover assets for creditors, they have a tremendous number of NFTs that are going to come to market. Some in projects that have historically fetched a fair value. So Fidenzas, for example, is an art project that I think there's been at the floor somewhere around 70 ETH, but they have like, I don't know, a dozen Fidenzas that they need to sell, right? And the floor can't digest dozens of Fidenzas. Another one is this Art Ringers project. There's a very famous Art Ringers NFT called the Goose because it's shaped like a goose that Three Arrows Capital owns. They'll probably put that to auction and recover a decent amount. By the way, I've totally lost you on camera. There we go.
All right, just stop camera for a second. No worries.
Okay, all good. So it's going to be, again, at the same time you have all this blur airdrop farming, people throwing their NFT liquidity into this mercenary airdrop liquidity. You've got Three Arrows Capital, whose NFT book is going to get liquidated at the same time. I think it's going to be tears at the end of the day for the NFT world.
Are you? But at the same time, are you excited to get your juice back? Talking about all these vocabulary words again, and saying all this stuff with a straight face. It's been a while since you've been in this game.
I feel like I've wasted so much brain space on this. But this, honestly, you know what? This is my Sunday morning cartoons. Like, this is just my pure candy. Like, it's just kind of fun to track some of this stuff because it's so insane, but it's market adjacent. Like, understanding traditional finance markets helps you understand, hopefully, what's going on in this space. Tons of people trading in this space are not, traditionally finance market trained and may not understand, like, that standing bids and offers are sort of like writing puts and calls. That gives you, I mean, hopefully an edge if you are trading this stuff. But man, oh man, it's exciting, ridiculous times in the world of crypto.
Well, I think you said it perfectly. One, I'll go back to your trademark that crypto is speed running traditional finance, right? Learning on its own in a sped up time frame, which just want to give you always credit on that. And then the second, which I think you're getting more to here, that I think it's really fascinating, is it forces you to rethink traditional markets as well, and the structures and the different strategies we use. It brings back a lot of that, like almost like really finance 101 concepts, and making sure you have them nailed down to understand what the crypto is doing and vice versa. And so it brings up a lot of things that maybe you or I haven't thought about in decades. And I like that. It makes you think the frameworks that work and what is this similar to, and what are the past examples of this where it worked out poorly, and see like how close those analogies are, or if there's different nuances.
Right. Yeah. One recent one that came up was, so SudoSwap, which is another NFT platform, as Blur is doing this airdrop, they decide to launch their own token. They had a token before, sort of somewhat related, called XMON, which I had been a long time holder of. And I wake up one day to find out that, well, if you are willing to lock your XMON, you get X number of pseudo tokens. And there was a very clear like market inefficiency where people hadn't done the math to realize there was like an arbitrage where you could buy XMON, lock it up, immediately dump the pseudo token, and XMON could basically go to zero and you would have made money. Like it didn't matter that whether you were getting your XMON back in a month or so. And just like being, I don't want to say classically trained, but trained to think about, okay, there's in these several steps, have people thought through the implications, or are they just acting out of behavioral impulse, and that's creating an opportunity? What is fascinating to me is the opportunities still exist in crypto when you see that stuff, but they're getting closed faster and faster.
Well, I was about to say the worst part of that means you got to stay up 24/7, and you got to be on top of this stuff. That's the hard part, right?
The good news is I don't really care. It's fun when it pops up. I'll trade it when it pops up, but it's just fun to keep my finger on the pulse.
I'll try to close the loop, so to speak, is also on Top Traders Unplugged a while back. They had Perry Merling that loves talking about like euro dollar markets, the history of dollar. Charles Kinderberger is like his latest book. But it had me thinking about, crypto adjacent is like the circular nature of just like economies and everything we do in general. So for example, he was talking about after, World War I, the reparations we made Germany pay was basically the U.S. provided loans to Germany so they could pay, France and England a heightened interest rate, so that way France and England could pay the U.S. And I'm like, how's that not a circular economy, right? And then so we learned from that, from the debt side too high of interest rates. So then we provided an equity loan basically after World War II to Germany to do the same thing. And it's just like the circular nature of getting the money back to us with all the intermediaries involved. It reminds me always of a Florida neighborhood, right? You start looking around the Florida neighborhood, you're like, wait, this is the realtor, this is the mortgage provider, this is the contractor. And it just feels like this just like circular economy of services. In the same way, that's what I'm saying. It's not a disparaging way of looking at crypto, but it is just like this system of circular flows. And everybody like, so how do you extract your rent from that? But it's just, I can never really wrap my head around in general, like, is the general economy a closed loop Ponzi system or not? It's hard not to, when you see these kinds of things, to look at it that way.
Last thing I'll add on the NFT side, right, is you think about knowing about buyers and sellers, and especially with an asset that doesn't necessarily have fundamental value. A lot of these NFTs don't have fundamental value. Some do. I actually think Bored Apes, for example, is an example of a collection that's backed by a company with $5 billion, right, in cash, that is trying to create a brand. Like, they're going to spend a lot of money trying to make that into something. If I know that 72 apes were just sold, and at the end of this airdrop, like the floor might crash. Well, if I'm thinking about being a buyer, there might be a much more opportunistic time at the end, in the end of this airdrop season, because you're going to have all these people trying to get rid of their inventory. And so I think that knowing, right, that there's a wave of selling that's likely to be coming over time, and keeping your eye on how much excess inventory has been built up for these mercenary farmers, I think can help inform better buying if you're into that stuff.
The only problem is you don't know where how long that floor extends, or to what's the depth of that selling pressure, right?
That's absolutely right. Well, actually, you do a little bit, right? Because these are all on-chain wallets. So you can, in theory, track where they've all gone and sort of try to figure out, is this mercenary liquidity or not? How many of these have sold? So there is actually a weird amount of transparency that can go into it. That said, you don't know how many other people are thinking the same thing and going, "Ooh, this is going to be a great buying opportunity," and then you're all going to front run each other and the floor never moves and the liquidity does show up. So who knows? But I do think, again, edge, in my opinion, typically comes when you can figure out exactly who's selling, why they're selling, when they're selling, right? And you can be a counterparty on the other side to that, either selling before them or buying, at a much more attractive price.
And what's forever going to piss me off is being early is the equivalent of being wrong. And I was all over crypto kitties. Why did it have to wait for punks and apes? Why couldn't it have been the crypto kitties? Anyway, thank you for everybody for this extended version, and especially getting into crypto. We maybe got down to one listener, as we like to do, as like literally all the way down to one member left of the Booty Crew. But please, like, subscribe, turn on those notification bell. You got to adhere to the pirate's pinky promise. But in general, remember,
a hook is the pinky promise like a hook promise?
I think my pinky is too small to like even hook. Like, yeah,
broke my pinky playing lacrosse. I actually can't do that.
Oh man, that's the biggest Chad Laxbro thing I've ever heard.
That was.
Remember, none of this is investment advice. Hopefully, it's for entertainment purposes only. We strive to entertain. That's part of our pirate pinky promise. But otherwise, we look forward to seeing you all next week. I think I'll be on the road, but we should still be live on Friday at 3:00 Eastern, 12 Pacific. Thank you
I might have
for
a baby on my chest.
There we go. Let's do this.